Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter, joined as I am every week by my dear friend Dr. Gregory Popcak. He and his bride Lisa co-host More to Life on EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network, a call-in family help program. They're also the developers of the Catholic HOM network. They're authors and co-authors of more than a dozen books. Find out about more of their work, Catholic HOM. Greg, thank you very much for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Marcus. Glad to be here.
Greg, it's always a bit of an affirmation when the secular media and secular culture catches up to something that, gee, I don't know, you and your bride have put out as formal research for over a decade now. So tell us about what Fox News recently reported.
Well, yeah, so it's actually very exciting. The Institute for Family Studies is an organization, of course, that promotes family well-being and researches healthy family practices. And they just recently released a study that talked about passing the faith on from one generation to the next. Now, we know from two recent studies that, especially with regard to Catholics, about 85 to 90% of children raised in Catholic homes will leave the faith by the time they reach adulthood. And so even now, when we see that there are so many, we hear all about all the Gen Z kids coming back into the church and how, we feel like this is kind of a Catholic moment. And it's wonderful, but it doesn't change the fact that for every one convert we get, we still lose 8 to 9 people. Because we're losing our children at such an extreme rate. So what this study from the Institute for Family Studies looked at was, what does it take to pass the faith on from one generation to the next? And they basically confirmed the results from the study that I did with Dr. Mark Gray from the Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate at Georgetown in 2024, that basically said that it's really the family relationships that are the most effective predictor of faith transmission from one generation to the next. That yes, the family has to be participating in a faith community. Yes, the family has to be engaged in spiritual practices within the home. But what enables those things to stick is, the way we put it in our study, was if the kids experience the faith as the source of the warmth in their homes growing up. So strong relationships between the husband and the wife, strong relationships between the parents and the children, fathers especially being active in the family relationships in general, family spiritual practices in particular, are all positive factors in passing the faith on from one generation to the next. This study did not go as deeply into the specific practices that families need to do in order to pass the faith on from one generation to the next, but it did confirm in a broader way that it's really family relationships and family dynamics that have the greatest influence on whether children will own their faith as adults.
If I may read a paragraph from the article that completely points to what you said. Regular conversations about faith also appear to make a major difference. Children raised in homes where religion was discussed several times a week or more were more than twice as likely to attend church weekly, pray daily, and consider religion highly important as young adults. They were also about 20 percentage points more likely to identify as Christians and believe that Jesus Christ is God, which goes back to what you and Lisa have always been saying, that the faith needs to be more than peppered on. It ought to inform the intimacy and warmth of home life.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we as Catholics are not really taught how to do that. I
Mm.
think the message that most of us get is that we should do as many of the religious things as we can. We may definitely go to Mass on Sunday and holy days. If we can afford it, send our kids to Catholic school, make sure they go to youth group, and maybe say grace at meals. But in terms of how our faith is actually supposed to affect the quality of our relationships, I don't think Catholic parents get any instruction on that at all. And there are some families that intuit that. And those families, about the 10 to 15% of families who intuit that, manage to pass the faith on to their kids. The rest of Catholic parents are doing what we've been told to do. We do all the Catholic things, right? We get calls on the show all the time about this, or from parents in the practice. I did all the things. I took them to Mass. I sent them to Catholic school. We sent them to youth group. We said grace, when we could. And maybe we said the rosary even as a family. But the problem is that because the kids didn't experience the faith making a tangible difference in the quality of the relationships in the home and the way we approach problems, they didn't really see it as relevant. They saw it as a weird hobby that their parents had, that for some reason mom and dad really like to do this strange thing, but it doesn't really mean anything to me. And so as kids, they might have liked to serve at the altar or might like to read at mass or do various things because that's the stage of faith that kids are in up until about age 10, where they like to kind of learn the grown-up stuff and participate in
Hmm.
the things. So, see, look, I'm responsible. I'm doing the big person stuff. But whenever we hit 11, 12, 13, 14, that's when our stage of faith moves into what we might call a relationship stage, where I know something is true based on whether it impacts my relationships in a positive way or not. And that's where a lot of Catholic parents fail because we end up treating the faith as a whole bunch of rules or, hey, you shouldn't associate with this person, or you shouldn't do those things, or you shouldn't participate in those activities. And so in many ways, we communicate to our kids that faith is an obstacle to the relationships that they want to have instead of talking about how faith can help them have healthier relationships that would then make them want to carry their faith into adulthood so that their faith could be a guide for having healthy marriage and family relationships when they have their own kids.
One of the things that you and Lisa have spoken about copiously, even most recently in your program too, that this article highlights is that there's a very distinct roles that fathers have to play. That
Mhm.
fathers who have strong bonds with their children, just quoting this study again, at the low level, 73% higher odds of believing in God compared to children who had conflictual or distant relationships with their fathers.
Yes, and so when moms hear this, of course they can despair a little bit and say, "Well, don't
Mm.
I matter at all?" And the metaphor I like to use is that it's mom's job to pack their kids' spiritual lunch, but it's dad's job to make sure the kids take it to school. What I mean by that is that developmentally, children for the first, year and a half to 2 years of life don't think that they're different, they're separate from mom. They see mom as me, right? I grew inside mom's body, so mom's just an extension of me. So whatever mom does speaks to my personal life. What dad is the first other. He's the first not me. And whatever dad does represents the world to me. So when mom is faithful and when mom engages in religious practices, that tells me that that's something that I should do personally. That should be personally meaningful to me. But when dad is engaged in spiritual practices, what that says is that's how I operate with the world. That's how I interact with the world. And that teaches me to take this thing that's personal outside of me. And so when you talk to a lot of adults who say that they're spiritual but not religious, if you track it back, most of the time they were raised in households with a mom who was religious but a dad who wasn't.
You've got a bunch of other factors working in that, but ultimately, though, it goes back to what you and Lisa have been saying all along, that this faith that we live cannot just be an ancillary part of family life if we are serious about our children continuing the faith.
That's absolutely right. And I would like to see us as a church do more to help parents make that happen. Because when we get calls from folks all the time that will say, well, so how do you guys live your faith at home? And they'll say, well, we go to mass on Sunday. I say, that's awesome. How do you live your faith at home? Well, we send the kids to Catholic school. Great. How do you live your faith at home? Well, we send the kids to youth group. Great. How do you live your faith at home? We say grace. I mean, if the faith, if mom and dad can't say how the faith is making a difference in their households, how could their kids possibly experience Christ's love is making a real difference in our relationships and in my life? And so that's one of the reasons we created the Catholic HOM app to be able to support parents in learning how to do this. How do we bring the faith home in ways that don't just kind of tack on spiritual practices to our family life, but in a way that actually integrate those practices in a manner that allow us to live differently and to love better. That doesn't mean you have to be a perfect family, by the way. The people that we interviewed in our study in 2024 talked about the struggles that they had as families and the difficulties they went through, but they went through them differently. They prayed through them together. They saw that God helped them go through those difficulties as a family in ways that drew them closer to each other and to God. And so they were grateful to their faith as being a resource in those times of struggle, just as much as they were grateful to their faith for being a way to show them how to have a happy, healthy family life in the first place. So it's all about learning how to bring the faith into our relationships, into our interactions. And we talk about how to do that and not just teach you, but we actually coach you on how to overcome the hurdles that you experience on the CatholicHOM app. If anybody has any questions, they can always ask Lisa and me and our whole team of pastoral counselors and coaches, plus get tons of other resources too. So if folks are interested in what we're sharing here today on the show, and interested in living out the increasing body of research that shows that it's all about making the faith the source of the warmth in the home, then that's what CatholicHOM is all about. And they can check it out at CatholicHOM wherever they get their apps.
We're talking to Dr. Gregory Popcak and his bride Lisa, co-host More to Life on EWTN, and they're developers of the Catholic HOM Home app. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter.